Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Curious Realms continuing coverage of the 2024 MUFON Symposium right here in Irving, Texas. We have the great pleasure of being joined yet again by Barabara Sobhani. Welcome back to the show.
Oh, thank you so much. Always a pleasure.
You have the distinct honor of being family of the actual founders of MUFON. Tell us a little bit about what it was like to grow up in literally a UFO house.
You know, I think about that all the time, and because clearly not everybody has that experience.
Yeah.
But so things that were very normal for me, I'm sure were not the norm. You know, my dad being involved in pretty much everything UFO.
Mm-hmm.
You know, having lots of UFO folks over to the house on a regular basis.
And Stanton Friedman, people like that.
Yeah, Bob Wood, you know,
Wow.
all kinds of folks that I just took for granted. Like, doesn't everybody know these people?
They were just people.
They're just our family friends, you know.
Yeah.
And then, you know, Dad working on cases and things like that. That was just, you know, UFOs were everyday conversation for us. And I think that really helped me, though, sort of establish a very open mind. You know, I mean, I am a scientist.
Yep.
I work with engineers. I do, you know, but having a perspective that allows you to think about all the possibilities.
Yeah.
You know, I think that's important.
It is. And, you know, that is one of the things that we bring up on this show regularly, Barbara, and something that we talked about last year in Ohio whenever we had you on was I understand a lot of people's kerfuffle in the community about the change of UFO to UAP.
Right.
However, I fully stand behind what the director of the NASA panel said in the first panel, where they were like, no, changing it to UAP brings it directly in our backyard. It makes it our purview.
Right.
It's our responsibility to look into phenomenon. Right? Unless you subtract the phenomenon from the data set, you don't have a complete data set. Like,
right.
I would not have passed chemistry with a 5% remainder of solution.
Right.
Did it go off gas? Did it go to sediment? What happened to the 5%?
Right.
You know?
Right.
And that's just it. Like, science starts with observation. It starts with experience.
Absolutely.
Literally. And that's why MUFON starts with an experience. It starts with taking in a witness statement. Like, you have observed something. That is literally the beginning of the scientific process.
Right. Right. And encouraging people to talk about their experience, as you know, I think that over the years and you know, again, sort of reflecting on how
Sure.
things have changed as I've, you know, grown up. It was very much not invited, not encouraged to talk about your experiences for the most part, right? Because, you know, lots of folks in the scientific community didn't want to talk about it. They didn't want to be associated with it because of really the stigma, right? So, you know, if a small change in nomenclature can help remove that stigma, I don't see anything wrong with that.
Yeah, precisely, because it is the conversation, and that's just it. Like, you've got to have an open mind. The beautiful thing about the scientific method is that third part, the hypothesis.
Right.
The idea that once you've observed and once you've gone through and cataloged information and looked at things in a different way, now you're supposed to have the open mind to consider all possibilities. All possibilities is what's supposed to be there. Hypothesis should literally be anything from the craziest idea to the most sound.
Right. Right. And then you test it and you figure it out.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So with you actively working in the field of science, how have you seen some of the methodology in the world of UFO, UAP change as far as investigation, things like that?
You know, I've been a part of, well, on the editing side of MUFON for many, many years.
Yeah.
So I actually edited some of the very first versions of the Field Investigator Manual.
Oh, wow.
And one of the reasons that my dad had me do that was because of my scientific background. And he's like, let's let's kind of look at some of these things with that eye.
Yeah.
And as we're training our field investigators, are we laying in that groundwork for helping field investigators approach things in that scientific manner?
Yeah.
And which I fully appreciate. And what I have seen in MUFON is a growth there, really digging into helping field investigators, helping members really understand what that process is all about.
Yeah.
Because if we're trying to get to the bottom of a mystery, you have to approach it in a systematic way.
Yeah.
So I see so many parallels, of course, with how we're approaching things in MUFON, and then how I go about things with my students. It's not really different.
Yeah. Yeah. No, precisely. And trying to get across once again that methodology of how do you catalog things? How do you make sure that you are putting things in the proper perspective, not filtering the information through experience as you take it in, things like that.
Yep.
And, especially that objectivity. We're literally a mile and a half, 2 miles away from my alma mater, University of Dallas. And I always refer back to Dr. Churchill, my psychology professor, who was like, no, Chris, just write down what the gorilla did. Don't write down why they did it.
Right.
You don't know why he picked up the stick. Just put down 2:30. Gorilla picked up stick, held it for 1 minute, put it down. And that's the observation.
That is the data. Right.
Beyond that,
Exactly.
you're assuming what the gorilla is doing. You're personifying what the gorilla is doing. And that's not science.
Right. And and as with anything, when you become passionate about something, it is very easy to start infusing some of that.
Yeah.
And into observation or data, or it does happen. It can happen.
Absolutely.
And not for any nefarious purpose, just because you get really passionate about it.
Yeah.
Right.
And
and I think that's where I think all of us as researchers need to make sure checking ourselves every once in a while, right?
Yeah.
Yep. Like, am I still remaining objective? Or am I still looking at this with a critical eye?
Yeah.
That kind of self-reflection, I think, is important for anyone, but particularly for any kind of researcher.
Yeah. And
because it always sets off a little bit of alarm bells when somebody, I know all the answers and I know exactly everything and I've got it all figured out, because I don't think any of us have it all figured out.
Well, even the idea of science being static.
Right.
Once I don't know. I have a problem when people say it's science. It's like, what's science? I have an astronomy textbook that I made A's in high school that says Pluto's a planet. My son's astronomic chart doesn't say that from 3 years ago. It says it's a planetesimal.
Right.
It's not a planet anymore because science changes.
Right.
The day science is static, it's dogma. It's no longer science.
Right. And that's where I think it's so important to help people understand that, that it is a process. Science is a process.
Yes.
It's not an end result.
That's right. It is, and it's an ever-evolving process, and it has to be, and you have to see it that way. And the phrase that I have always loved is killing your darlings. Don't be afraid to kill your darlings, and that's what you're talking about when it comes to you get so involved and so engulfed and enwrapped in a project and so passionate about it that it becomes your darling, and you become afraid to let somebody attack your darling or let somebody bring in a different data set that may set it aside.
Right. And you have to be ready to set it aside if it's not right.
Yeah.
But that's hard to do. I mean, we're humans. So.
Yeah. Now, getting to your work with the Colorado Space Grant, what kind of work do you do there, and how are you helping bring up the future of science?
Well, that's a great question. So it in a couple ways, being the director over the statewide program, I really do get to kind of look at things from a broad perspective, because we have programs that we set up to help students learn that process, learn the design process, the engineering process, the scientific method. We design statewide challenges that spur that, and also get them excited about learning and taking part in that process. So we have a robotics challenge, we have a high altitude balloon payload challenge,
Cool.
and a wearable technology challenge. And right now we're in the midst of trying to acquire some funding to start a new space biology challenge.
Oh, wow.
Which we've got a lot of neat ideas around that. So
interesting.
Yeah.
Now, can you give us any concepts on what you're working on with that? Is it totally hush hush?
Well, it's not that it's hush hush. It's just that we don't have the funding
You're
yet.
you're still in the works. But what's the concept behind it?
Well, we've got a couple neat ideas, and we've made some great connections with some researchers across the state that are doing really awesome work. On plant adaptation to extreme environments.
Oh.
How does change in gravitational exposure, does it affect telomere length in cells and
Sure.
things like that. So lots of really neat questions, and
Yeah.
we're trying to figure out, okay, how can we wrap that into a challenge then that we can challenge college and university student teams to come up with unique ways to test things and things like that. So it's exciting, and I'm excited to see where it goes.
That is truly exciting. It really brings back to mind the NASA experiment that was conducted about 3 years ago with the twins.
Absolutely.
Where they had the
Yes.
two twins, one on Earth, one in space for like a year and a half.
Yep.
And to see the biological changes that
Right.
were different when he came back after a year and a half.
Right. And that actually, that is sort of the premier experiment.
Yeah, yeah.
But then there's lots of other experiments that have gone on particularly with the space station, and exposing different organisms to long-term presence on the space station, and then studying those, comparing those to ones that have been on Earth. I mean, that gives us a huge amount of data to work with to really figure out, okay, what are the questions we need to be looking at?
Yep, and they've been doing all kinds of experiments for years. I know. I want to say it was China that just took some bees up to see how they make their hives in zero gravity.
Yep.
We've had ant farms in space for years to see how they differ.
We've had spiders to see how they build their webs or can't build their webs.
Yeah, and it's pretty remarkable. And with that in mind, what do you think the downfall, and how long do you think the fallout will be with the upcoming scuttle of the space station? Because that is one of the saddest moments in my life.
Yeah.
I'm born in 1975, so it was right up against Skylab dying.
Right. Yep.
I got to see the space station come back to life in my lifetime, my whole span, and to see it disappearing again. Way to go, SpaceX. Push it right into orbit. I can't wait to take pictures with my equipment. But it's one of those, it's sad. We're going to be without that platform for a few years.
Right. And, and it won't be forever. No. They're working on the plans for Gateway and, some of these other projects.
Yeah.
So we will have another platform, but I totally agree with you. The amount of amazing science that has been done on the space station, it just blows me away.
Well, even a 3 to 5 year gap between the two, that is a massive amount of scientific discovery that will not occur.
Absolutely.
In that kind of way.
I agree with you.
Especially with our return to the moon right now with Artemis, things like that. What kind of things are they looking at? Because, of course, you're involved with the robotics challenge, things like that.
Yep. Well, and also we have a lunar project that it's a student run and student developed and designed project to design some sensors that we would like to deploy on the lunar surface.
Cool.
To do characterization of the lunar regolith and different properties, and look for actually deploying these little lunasats out in a network, and so we could detect micrometeorite impact rates, because that's what helps make the lunar dust and the lunar regolith as the impact of the micrometeorites. So anyway, so we've been working with students on this project, and then we are using this as an opportunity to help students formulate questions and figure out like what kind of questions can we answer
Yeah.
by doing and developing this technology and doing this experiment. So even though, you know, I kind of look at that like I think we're going to be using the moon as the platform
Yeah.
in the way that we have used the space station as a platform.
And sadly, you know, had we never stopped making moonshots, we'd have been on Mars like a decade,
I know,
20 years ago.
I know.
But yes, to know that that will be our new base of operations for space experiments moving forward, that basically the new space station will be a way station on the way there.
Yes.
Like it'll be used in experimentation platform until we get to that.
Right.
But at that point, it's just going to be a way station.
Right.
You know, and that's a beautiful and amazing thing to see that we are right up against having a whole new kind of lab with microgravities and things like that will actually help us experiment a lot more as far as reaching out into the solar system, going to other moons, things like that, especially when it comes to Europa. That's why I just always go right back to Arthur C. Clarke's 2010.
Yeah.
You know, everything is yours except Europa.
Except
like
Europa.
Don't touch it. It's like leave Europa alone, please.
Although the Europa Clipper mission that we've got headed out. So,
yeah, and that's just it. There's some amazing science being done in the world of stellar biology right now, and exploring things like that, exploring Venus for possible life in the clouds.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's really remarkable. Really,
there are some exciting things on the horizon. So, yes, we're sunsetting the space station, but I am also sad about it.
I don't know a scientist that didn't.
Right.
You know,
well,
like,
and you know, that was one of the big projects that my dad, a large part of his career was you know, space station development. So you know, it's all very near and dear. But so a couple of years ago, I got the chance to go to the Neutral Buoyancy Lab and tour. And actually, cool. I don't know if folks know, but that was my dad's project. He was director of engineering on that project.
Wow! Too cool.
Yeah. So, and you know, they developed that so they could put modules, space station modules, in the tub and have them work on it. But when I went and visited, so they still have that, but they had a whole section that they had like the lunar surface. So they're already starting to do that training and
underwater and everything else.
Yeah,
that's cool.
So I was like, oh, this is kind of like a vision of things to come.
And you know, with that in mind, because we are having an Apollo scientist on today, things like that. Your educated opinion, Barbara, did we go to the moon?
Oh, of course.
I just had to ask because I can hear my audience right now like, lunar surface regolith. Like, yeah, sure we went to the... No, man, like we went to the moon. You wouldn't have a cell phone right now if we didn't go to the moon.
Right. And you know, I mean, we can do experiments on the stuff that we brought back from the moon. It's
and on what we left on the moon.
And all like you can see it.
We have laser reflectors that we left up there. We have seismographs that we left up there.
Absolutely. We have all of the data. In fact, my students this summer, I had them download all of the Apollo seismic data because we're developing, you know, the little accelerometer. So, you know, they're like, this is so cool. We're actually like looking at the lunar seismic data. I'm like, yep, you sure are.
That is wild, interesting, and you know, to be able to pass these techniques on and give the verve to the next generation of scientists is beautiful, and that kind of brings us to the point of the Legacy Fund, which was just started by MUFON in your mother's name. Let's get into that a little bit, Barbara.
Well, you know, we've been thinking and talking about this year, like how can we continue to inspire folks? Yeah. You know, and my mom was, of course, an integral part of MUFON, and you know, she worked tirelessly with my dad on MUFON, all things MUFON, and thinking about, you know, her legacy, her passing on last year. You know, how could we honor the spirit of volunteering and, you know, the spirit of really giving to to an organization like MUFON or really anything, but that spirit of, support and volunteerism and those things. And so we decided, well, let's start a fund. Let's start a fund, in honor of her memory, and then the money that goes into the legacy fund, the donations that go into that, we have some very specific things that will help support, in increasing our capacity to do research.
Sure.
The MUFON lab is, one of the things, supporting all things IT that have to be developed, of course, and for us to be an effective organization. So, really supporting, and something that I'm really excited about is supporting outreach, because I think that's what MUFON does. We have to be able to get the word out. About what MUFON is doing, how it's doing it, encourage others to get involved with it. We need great field investigators. We need folks who want to be a part of understanding what's going on.
Absolutely. And most importantly, Barbara, we need the next generation.
Absolutely.
The example I give is whenever I walk into a Knights of Columbus meeting, I'm 48. I walk into a Knights of Columbus meeting, I am hailed as like a hero. People buy me beers. Like, hey, young buck. And it's like, I don't know if I'm the demographic that you should be courting. You should really be looking at like 25-year-olds.
Right.
We're a mile and a half away from a university.
Right.
Contacting Office of Student Life. Hey, we'll gladly give a 10% discount with the student ID.
Yeah.
Things like that.
Right.
Contacting the science department. Bring your students. Come check it out. This is a different way, because MUFON, the symposiums used to happen at universities. There was a full-on handshake between the two.
Right.
So to bring that new generation in is what we need. It also provides a whole new scientific perspective.
Right.
You know?
Absolutely. We have to do that. It's not it would be nice. We have to.
It is an essential. Right. It's an essential.
Right.
And that's the idea of even the word legacy. It means past, present, future.
Absolutely. And setting up a fund is just a small part of what we need to be doing to make sure that legacy continues.
Yeah, precisely, because it's about building a mentality and making sure that mentality carries forward, making sure that the heart of MUFON carries forward, the heart of the research and the way that it was originally built to do.
Yeah.
So I want to thank you so much for your time once again. It's always great talking with you. I love following you on social media and seeing all the amazing lab work that you do with these students, all the great stuff that you're doing for the future of science. It's absolutely awesome. Thank you so much for your time. Let everybody know where they can go to find out more about the grant program, where they can go to get involved with the grant program and get involved with the Legacy Fund.
Absolutely. Go to MUFON.com, click on Donate, and there's in the drop-down menu, it says Legacy Fund.
All right there. Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Barbara. While you are online getting involved with the Legacy Fund at MUFON.com, make sure to stop on by CuriousRealm.com. That is where you can like, follow, subscribe, share, comment. That's also where you can get your copy of our official field observation and encounter log. If you're out there investigating the paranormal, investigating UFO, UAP, investigating cryptids, at some point you will have to shake your hands with science. And unfortunately, they need the 1,000 words, not just the picture. So stop on by. Check that out, everybody. Stay tuned through these commercial breaks. We will be right back with our continuing coverage of the 2024 International MUFON Symposium right here in Irving, Texas, right after this.
The key to good science is good research. At the heart of good research is a good data set. With the field observation and encounter log from Curious Research, you can easily keep track of your investigative information all in one place, making it easier to review cases and readily see comparisons and contrasts between them. Whether out in the woods squatching, in a back room gathering EVPs, or using high-tech gear to track UFO, UAP activity, this easy-to-carry, pocket-sized scientific data log is the perfect companion for any field researcher. You can find your copy of the Curious Research Field Observation and Encounter Log at Amazon.com or visit the official Curious Realm store at curiousrealm.com/store to reserve your copy for yourself, your family, or a mind that you want to open. That website again is curiousrealm.com/store.